Howdy folks, and welcome to the Salt Mines Discord server Q&A for November. I hope you're all having a great weekend if you're watching this as Monday's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've had a great weekend. No major announcements to make, so I guess we'll crack straight on, although I hope you all saw the Arms Trade Tycoon Tanks bonus video that went up today. That's obviously today if you're watching this live, and yesterday if you're watching this as an episode of Mingles with Jingles. I saw that game first about 2 years ago. There was a demo, and it's just gone into alpha. You can't actually, it doesn't have a release date yet, but you can wishlist it on Steam. Anyway, enough about that. Let's crack on with the questions. First one comes from Aki Kia Kaha. Jingles, are you going to play the new RoboCop game at some point? Yeah, I've seen mixed reviews of that. I mean, it's RoboCop, and I remember, like, when RoboCop came out, there was a software developer called Ocean, who basically specialised in doing really cheap and shitty and fast movie tie-ins. This was in the 90s. But their RoboCop game was actually really, really good. It was one of the first proper 3D first-person perspective shooters. And it had the whole targeting lock-on with his Beretta Auto 9 gun. It was a really, really good game. I've seen a couple of videos of people playing it, and I'm not a huge fan of the, like, you open a door and then there's a loading screen. It seems like the kind of game that was developed for mobiles and then ported over. But I don't know, I might give it a shot. Depends how much it is. But yeah, I'm aware that it exists. Anyway, next one from Did Nothing 2. Hey Jingles, did you see any good movies lately? Oh yeah, I've seen a lot. I've seen a few movies lately. Not all of them were good. I haven't actually been to the movies in ages because I used to go with Eddie. Usually on a Tuesday, if there was anything on at the movies, then we'd go to the movies. We'd get something to eat, and that would be our Tuesday. But you know, Eddie's gone, so I haven't really had the opportunity to go much. I watched a couple of things on either Netflix or Amazon. I'll tell you what was surprisingly good that I didn't really expect to be any good at all because of the pedigree of that type of movie. The Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves movie. That was actually really, really good. It wasn't stupid. There were only some moderately annoying plot holes, and the cast were excellent. It was way better than I was expecting it to be. So that's a recommendation. I've got a couple of other movies that I haven't actually watched yet, but I like the new Mission Impossible, which I am looking forward to, but I haven't watched yet. So, I mean, they're usually good. The second one was kind of garbage. The third one was, but all the ones after that have been excellent. So I'm looking forward to the new Mission Impossible. Next question from Catster. A very good morning to our gnome overlord, his gracious Jingles. I was wondering, since the playthrough of Inside, would you consider doing a playthrough of Limbo? It's made by the game dev team Play Dead Studios. Very similar game to Inside. Well, thank you for that recommendation. I'll have to look that up. Inside was such a good game. I mean,
do wish I could help you, Captain.
It was amazing the way they managed to stretch the limitations of what was essentially just a sideways scroller, with very, very few control options, but the way they managed to stretch those limited control options into an amazingly complex game. Also, the plot was just great. Everything about it, the atmospherics. If you haven't seen the Inside video series, I definitely recommend it. It was one of the most popular the usual World of Tanks, World of Warships stuff that goes up. But it's just such a good game. But yeah, if there's a game like it, Limbo, I'm gonna check that one out. Thank you, Catster, for the recommendation. Next one from Bearcat Racing. G'day Jingles, just got back from World Enema Day. Pain in the arse that was. The dad jokes are real. Speaking of which, what's your best explosive diarrhea or vomiting story? Okay. Right. I've never actually I have. When I was on HMS Newcastle,
I suggest paying a visit
best
to
ship
the
I ever
Sixth
served on.
Circle.
There was the marine engineers screwed up
If anyone knows where
They opened a
Percival
valve
is,
they shouldn't have
please
and closed a
scream
valve
his
they shouldn't
name.
have when they were fueling the
But I would
ship, and we
urge
ended up getting
caution.
our
They
fresh
never
water
do anything
contaminated with
without
fuel
futility.
oil. Not so much that we had to flush the tanks, but they're just enough. It was still technically drinkable fresh water, but it caused all kinds of stomach problems for the entire ship's company. And I can remember being on the quarterdeck having a cigarette one day. There's a whole bunch of people taking a quick 5 minutes
No
off on the
conspirators
quarterdeck. That's where everybody
upstairs.
went.
Go drown yourself
And I was
there.
talking to
His
one
spars
of the
were devil's
stokers,
pets in their
and
kit.
halfway through the conversation, he shit himself. He thought it was a fart, and it wasn't a fart. And, and I laughed so much because I had the stomach bug as well. I laughed so much I lost control of my sphincter and I shit myself. So we're both standing on the quarterdeck with shit running down our legs, laughing our asses off at each other. Fun times. That's something you need to be suspicious of, by the way, when you get older. Never trust a fart. Always double check it and make sure that it is actually a fart and it's not something worse. If you're over 40, you probably know what I'm talking about. That was a great question. I hope you all enjoyed the answer. Moving on to the next question from Yamatog2. If you could provide your voice for any fictional character or historical character in media, retroactively or future projects, which characters would you choose? Oh, I'd love to do Harry Dresden. I don't know if you've read the Dresden Files. Fantastic series of books. I can't remember the name of the author. I'm sure it'll come to me at some point. But the Dresden Files, they got some reasonable comics made out of them and an absolutely terrible TV series that I think got cancelled halfway through the first season. But the basic idea is that magic is real, although most people aren't aware of it. Elves, vampires, all that stuff is real, but it's all hidden. And wizards are real. And but again, they're supposed to keep it on the quiet. But this Harry Dresden guy actually advertises himself in the Chicago phone book as a detective wizard for hire. Right? Amazing stories, and I would love to voice Harry Dresden. I cannot recommend these books enough, by the way. It's, how can I put this? They're the kind of stories that could easily just be bad fan fiction. And there's all kinds of really cool nerdy stuff in them, but they're so well written that they transcend the source material. For example, there's a character, and again I'm struggling to remember names and details here, but there's always one person who wields this holy sword, and they're kind of like God's agent on Earth, smiting evil wherever they go. And it doesn't matter what happens to the bearer of the sword. Somebody else, if they die or if for one reason or another they end up having to retire, somebody else will always end up taking up the mantle of whatever the name of the character is. And I'll make no apologies because this is a huge spoiler, but it's just awesome. There's one character who he's some kind of medical doctor, and he's a massive nerd, massive science fiction nerd, and he ends up being chosen to be the new bearer of the sword. But the way it happens, he's completely, you would not expect this person at all, because he's terrible in a fight, he's really timid and so on and so on, but he's pure of heart. So when he picks the sword up, you see the sword always changes. Depending on the person who's actually bearing it. So when one person bears it, it's a katana. When another person bears it, it's a broadsword. When this guy picks it up, it turns into a lightsaber because he's such a massive science fiction nerd. It's anyway, yeah. Harry Dresden from the Dresden Files books. I cannot recommend them enough. They are absolute. They're just a nerd's paradise. Fantastic series of books. Anyway, moving on to the next. This has been really good questions today, and I'm really enjoying the answers as well. Hopefully you are too. Next question comes from Tank50US. Oh, and it's a really, really, really long question. Okay, here we go. Attention, Admiral Jingles. You've been promoted to Fleet Admiral in the Londonian Royal Navy. On your first full day in office, you're approached by one of your many design teams and are presented a new aircraft carrier design for the Navy. Okay. 4 ships are planned for the class. What names do you give these ships? So you're allowed to use ideas, emotions, and titles, but not actual names, like Nimitz Hood, so on and so on. He's working on a project for DCS. Oh, right. And he would like someone from the UK who served in the Royal Navy to name ships for a fictional version. The names must be safe for YouTube. Okay. All right. 4 aircraft carriers. British aircraft carriers. This is easy. Ark Royal, Invincible, Eagle, and Hermes. There you go. Because the Navy always reuses the names of ships. I mean, there's been like half a dozen Ark Royals. So, you know, there's always going to be an Ark Royal out there somewhere. So Ark Royal, Hermes, Invincible, and Eagle. Those are my choices. Thanks for the question. Next one, Panzer Roofs. Dear Mighty Overlord, first of all, thank you very much for your gift of today's bonus video. Oh yeah, the Arms Trade Tycoon Tags video. Now for the question. If you would win a 2-week all-cost included vacation to any destination around the world, where would you go and why? You see, that's the thing, but being in the Navy for 22 years, you basically have paid vacations all around the world anyway. So a lot of the places that I'd like to go to, I have already been. And then when I retired, I made a point of trying to visit all of those places that I didn't get to go to when I was in the Navy, like the USA, for example. But I never got to go to Japan. So yeah, 2 weeks in Japan, that would be it. Not because I'm a massive weeb, but because Japan's just so weird and interesting, and there's so much to see and do there. So yeah, that would be it, because that's the one place that's on my bucket list that I've never actually been to yet, because it's so horribly expensive to get there. But all expenses paid, 2 weeks, yeah, definitely. I'll take Japan. Easy one. Next question from Yang Weeb Lee. Hello, Mighty Overlord Jingles. I hope, yes, I am recording. Just hope you'll join our anime watch club and have a great day. Oh, he's just remembered something. It's been quite a long time since he heard anything from the series of dumb things that Rita said. Yeah, she's been pretty good lately. It's not that I'm not, taking the opportunity to drop her in the shit every time she says something stupid. It's just she hasn't actually said or done anything remarkably stupid for a while. So, yeah, sorry. Oh, P.S. Anime recommendation of the season. Friar and Beyond Journey's End. Why does everybody keep recommending anime to me? It's because of Girls and Panzer, isn't it? I've only got myself to blame. Also, say hello to Rita from us. She's actually sitting about 3 feet away from me working on some of the fabric stuff. So, hello, Rita, from the Salt Miners. I don't know if you heard that. She said hello. Right, next question from Dusty. Hello, Jingles. I've been wondering, did you earn any nicknames during your time in the Navy? Oh, yeah. And do they have any funny stories attached? And as I know you love tangents, do you know any other funny nicknames and the stories attached to them for other folk you know? Okay. Everybody in the Navy has a nickname. And it's not like when you're with your friends or your colleagues from work and somebody does or says something that earns them a nickname. In the Navy, your surname determines what your nickname is going to be. So because my surname was Charlton, when I was in training, all of the instructors called me Eddie because of the snooker player Eddie Charlton. But they were all old. And he was well before my time. Once I actually got out into the service at sea in ships, with a slightly younger audience around me, I was known as Bobby because of the footballer, Sir Bobby Charlton. And these nicknames are tied to your surname. However, I did also earn a bunch of semi-official nicknames from my messmates on board the ships that I was assigned to. They called me Grandpa Simpson towards the end of my career, not just because I was old, but also because I could fall asleep in the middle of a sentence. And also I like to shout at clouds. But I also earned the nickname Barry Norman. Now, if you're not British and old, you probably won't know who Barry Norman is, but he used to present a film review TV show. It's a bit like the British version of Siskel and Ebert. Or Ebert, I don't even know how you pronounce his name. But this happened primarily because of this one occasion where I walked into the mess deck and the lights were all off, so it was pitch black, and everybody was watching a movie. And the movie had just come on, it was on the TV, and as I walked into the mess deck, the only thing that was on the screen was just a black screen with white lettering, and it just said, produced by Arnold Copelson. And I said, oh, you're watching Platoon? And they paused the video, turned the lights on. How the hell did you know? Because, I don't know, movies are just, like, Rita's got this massive blind spot in her head when it comes to movies. She doesn't even know which movie she's watched. To say the name of an actor, she has no idea who it is, but I just remember stuff about movies. And so I got the nickname Barry Norman on the mess deck for that particular occasion. But there are plenty of other nicknames. For example, if you're in the Navy, if your surname's Watson, then your nickname's Soapy. I don't know where that one comes from. If your surname is Turner, your nickname's Topsy. You can look them up. Just Google Royal Navy nicknames. And there's just a colossal list of the nicknames that everybody gets based entirely upon what their surname is. So, next question comes from owner of the Demon Dog. Jingles, I saw your video about the Ship Happens series. Love the old Why You Have to Be Mad videos. Looking forward to them. As you may have seen or heard, the TOG 2 has been added to War Thunder. Do you think you'll get any good games to cover with it? Yeah, I heard about the TOG 2. Unfortunately, and I don't know, I think I mentioned this in an episode of Mingles with Jingles or a Q&A, some strange things started happening with my War Thunder account. So, I mean, I didn't log in that often. Normally, I'd only fire the game up to watch a replay. And then one day I logged in and saw that my name had been changed. And I was getting a couple of notifications because, you know, War Thunder lets you know when people log in from suspicious locations. In fact, it lets me know every time I log in. After I've logged in to watch a replay, I will get a notification via email from Gaijin saying somebody logged into your account from here. I was like, yeah, that's me. I know. But then I was getting notifications that people were logging in from St. Petersburg and Singapore. Yeah, that's not me. So I logged in and my name had been changed and nothing appeared to have happened really to my account. But, and here's the problem, when I created the War Thunder account, it was with my old email address that I had to change when I moved to this place. And one of the things that I forgot to do was to revalidate the new email address while I still had access to the old one. So in order to actually, you know, reset your account and get it back, they're going to email the email address that no longer exists. So I reset the account and I have no way of getting it back. So I basically cannot play War Thunder. So I was kind of upset about that when I saw the news that they had the TOG 2. And I was quite looking forward to that, and then remembered, oh yeah, I don't actually have access to my War Thunder account anymore. I mean, I could create a new one, but I have to start again from scratch. So yeah, that's unlikely that I'm ever going to get to do it. Sorry. Aeon Kase says, hello, glorious Overlord Jingles. I have a question. Do you think you'll ever take up writing as a hobby? Who knows? You might even gain a new avenue of content. You know, I used to. It was all horrible fan fiction. Back in the early days of the internet, when everybody was playing on dial-up modems and having 250 millisecond ping was considered good, there was this organisation called the Emperor's Hammer, and it was a sort of Star Wars gaming fan club run by an American guy from New Jersey called William Carl. So he was basically the Grand Admiral, and then there were various different divisions within the club dedicated towards playing certain Star Wars games. So the majority of the club was called the Imperial TIE Fighter Corps for playing the game TIE Fighter, but there were other, you know, as other new Star Wars games came out, different divisions would be set up. Like when Dark Forces came out, the first-person shooter, they built the Hammer's Fist Stormtrooper Legion, and you could join that and play Dark Forces and so on and so on. And they published a monthly newsletter, and it was I remember at the time it was a megabyte, so it took a good 30 minutes to download, and anybody could submit anything for the monthly newsletter. All the various different officers in charge of the various different divisions would publish a monthly report, but then there was, like, you could submit fan art, and there were a lot of talented graphic artists who would submit stuff to the newsletter, and fan fiction. And I used to write some fan fiction about my character. My character was called Colonel Kessler. He was a squadron commander. Actually, later on became promoted quite high up within the club, but at the time mostly a squadron commander. within the TIE Fighter Corps, and I would just write fan fiction about the character, and it ended up being really quite popular. But this was like 15-20 years ago, and writing takes a lot of time and effort, and I just don't have the time anymore. But I did definitely enjoy it, and I think some of those stories might still be around in some form or other somewhere. If I can find them, I might post some links. I mean, you know, be gentle. They're fan fiction. They're not that great. But if I can find the links, I might post them up on social media. But yeah. Next question. Let's see. Oh, from Zoe. Jingles, you've told multiple times your favourite experience with other nations' navies, so what are some of the horror stories? I don't think there have been many, actually. I come to think of it, we've usually had pretty good experiences with other nations' navies. If there have been bad things, it's usually because of shit that we got up to. We were in Toulon, for example, in France, the big naval base there, as part of a NATO task force. I think we were doing smuggling, embargo, whatever, I can't remember, not really important, but there were like 4 ships within the task force. There was us, there was a German frigate who was the squadron commander, because they had the most senior captain, so the German captain was in charge, and there was 2 other ships from countries that I can't remember. And the first night in Toulon, somebody came back on board, drunk obviously, sneaked into the paint locker, got a whole bunch of pink paint, and then threw it all over the bows of the German ship, because apparently that's funny. And then the German captain wasn't happy, and our captain had to personally go over and apologise. And as a direct result of that, the entire ship's company got its leave stopped until somebody confessed, and obviously nobody did, because they're not stupid. We never found out who did it, although we had a couple of ideas. But that's about it. We've usually had pretty good experiences with other nations' navies, although I can remember we were doing basic operational sea training at Portland, which is horrible, by the way, before you deploy. And every couple of years you have to stay in date for operational sea training, so they send you to... Now I think they do it at HMS Raleigh down in Devonport, but at the time it was Portland in Dorset. And they just basically try to break you. They run you ragged for 4 weeks, just to try to break you, basically, and make sure that you can take the strain of high level operations. And there was a Dutch ship there at the time, and we swapped some crew over. And I wasn't one of the ones who went over, but the guys that did go over, it was a bit of culture shock. Because at the time, there were no women in the Royal Navy. I mean, there was the Women's Royal Naval Service, but they didn't go to sea. They weren't, ship's crew. But they are now, but at the time they weren't. Ships were all male. But not the Dutch ships, because, the Dutch are pretty progressive when it comes to sexuality. It's not really a big issue for them. But it wasn't just a case of, oh, this is weird, there are women on board these ships. They were in your mess deck. They didn't have separate mess decks. All the men and the women slept in the same mess decks and used the same showers. So our guys were horrified. I'm not getting naked in the showers in front of them. It was terrible. So yeah, no real horror stories about other navies. We usually have pretty good experiences with them. Next question comes from Shelves. Hi Jingles, hope you're well. Will you see any more Starfield videos? I really enjoyed having a sneak peek at the game before I bought it, but I loved Elite Dangerous if you ever go back to it. Also, have you made sure you're recording? I did do an audio test before recording this, so hopefully it's all working. Here's the thing about Starfield. I love the game. I think it's really good. It's not groundbreaking. It's not, there's nothing revolutionary about it. It's just Bethesda doing what they actually do quite well. And I'm fine with that. But playing through even just the main plot and skipping all of the side missions would take months. I mean, I could do the whole thing in about a weekend, but the recordings, putting the videos out, even half-hour videos, it would take months to do the whole thing. What I have considered doing is picking some of the side quests and recording that, because some of the side quests are really, really good too. In fact, when I first started playing Starfield, I basically ignored the main storyline for the first 4 or 5 days I was playing it and just had a great time doing the side quests. So once I get through with the Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty replay, and I know I've still got to do System Shock as well, I might do that in Starfield, because I'm on my New Game Plus now, and I might go through and just pick one of the better side quests and just record a full playthrough of that. So, yes, there will probably at some point be some Starfield videos. Next question comes from Noodle. With all the knowledge you have today, if you could be reborn somewhere else and join their military, would you change anything, or would you remain the proud English sailor you are today? I would still join the Navy, but you see, when I first joined the Navy, well, first of all, why the Navy? Why not the Air Force or the Army? I have a lot of relatives who were in the Army. I've got a cousin who was a sergeant in the Pioneers, an uncle who was a chef in the Army Catering Corps. My actual father was in the Paratroop Regiment, and I have one uncle who was an Air Force firefighter. But I was the first person to join the Navy, and the reason I joined the Navy, rather than the Army or the Air Force, well, I didn't join the Air Force because I do have a few shreds of self-respect, but I didn't like the idea of sleeping in ditches, so the Army was out. And with the Navy, you get a bed to sleep in every night and 3 hot meals every day. So that was number one, but the main reason was because the Navy were actually advertising. So I was 18 turning 19, having a horrible time at home because, I was a teenager, so I was an arsehole. So I wasn't getting on with my parents, and I just wanted to get away from home. And because I'd gone to boarding school when we lived in South Africa in Swaziland, being away from home wasn't the massive culture shock for me that it was going to be for anybody else joining the military. And the Navy were actually advertising in the local newspaper up in Newcastle called the Evening Chronicle, and they were advertising for radio operators. Now, because I was young and stupid, I didn't stop to ask myself the question, why are they so desperate for radio operators in particular? What is so shit about that job that so many people are leaving that they have to specifically advertise for them? So I just thought, well, if they're that desperate, I'll get in easily. And I did. I applied, and within 6 months I was at HMS Raleigh doing my basic training. The thing is, I just wasn't a very good radio operator. I was kind of shit at it. And it's a hard job, and it's very underappreciated. So I did 4 years just being bad at my job, and then thought, I'm going to transfer branch to writer, which is like ship's administration clerk. And I loved it, and I was really good at it. So I would still join the Royal Navy, but I wouldn't join as a radio operator. I'd join as a writer straight away. So yeah, great question. And yeah, that's the answer. SF Mason says, Jingles, given you've answered about the Robocop game, it looks like he's just edited this question. Have you had a thought to revisit Cold Waters? I kind of have. The thing is, again, time. Cold Waters requires a fairly substantial time investment, and I've got a lot of other, irons in the fire at the moment with Cyberpunk and System Shock and Starfield and, and so on and so on. And I mean, there were some amazing Cold Waters videos out there, like the one where I did a Jingles landing in a submarine and had to reverse up a slope to try to get off the bottom while the boat was flooding because of all the water pressure. But the thing about, if you watch somebody like Jive Turkey, who was actually a chief sonarman on board a US Navy submarine, he knows what he's talking about. I have a kind of basic idea of what I'm talking about when it comes to submarine warfare. Enough to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about when I'm doing those videos. But mostly it was Navy stories. And I'm kind of running out of them. I mean, you've heard most of them before. So doing the Cold Waters videos, I wasn't actually that good at the game, although, let's be honest, most people don't turn up to my channel to watch me being good at games. But I feel like I've kind of done everything that I could do with Cold Waters. Although, never say never. I mean, I know they've released several new campaigns. It might be worth going back and taking a look. But no promises, but we'll see. Next question comes from Ben Marine. Lord Jingles, as a native of the Southern Hemisphere, I must ask, what kind of refreshing drinks you'd recommend for the coming summer months? Oh yeah, of course, it's summer's coming up down there now, isn't it? Also, please do remember to record this Q&A. You know, you can't go wrong with a good gin and tonic, and there's so many different flavoured gins out there. That it doesn't have to be the same every time. There was I remember the brand. Again, when I used to go out for a meal and watch the movies with Eddie on a Tuesday, our favourite restaurant was in the Gunwharf in Portsmouth, and it's called Loch Fyne, and it's a quite small chain, but it's a chain of Scottish fish restaurants, and the food there was amazing. Holy shit, it's expensive, but the food there was amazing. But they also did these flavoured gin and tonics, and there was one of them, it was a violet gin. I know it sounds horrible, but it was so tasty and refreshing. I ended up Googling the brand and ordering some from Amazon. And there's a huge range of flavoured gins you can get out there. And it's just that gin and tonic is such a refreshing drink, particularly when it's hot. A load of ice, get it in a gin balloon, fill it full of ice, crush it if you want, and then get some flavoured gin, top it off with tonic, and it's just so refreshing. And because there are so many different flavoured gins out there, you can get pink gin, you can get violet gin, apple gin, you name it. It doesn't have to taste the same every time. So that would be my recommendation. And as you're a native of the Southern Hemisphere, you should be able to get Hunter's Gold cider as well, which is absolutely amazing too. Although, as an Australian, I mean, I don't know where exactly in the Southern Hemisphere, possibly South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, but Hunter's Gold, best cider in the world. I used to always get a crate, and it was hideously expensive because you have to import it. But I would always get Eddie a crate of Hunter's Gold for Christmas because he was a cider drinker and that was his favourite drink. Next question comes from Joyous. Hello, jolly old man. Hello to you, Joyous. Hope you're all right. I am. I hope you are too. What was your modern idea or vision of a TOG tank? And would it work? Well, probably not because it's a TOG. I don't think you can improve on perfection. There's nothing wrong. All right, there's plenty wrong with the TOG. It was a World War I tank that was designed just in time for World War II, but that's why I love it, because it was crap, but it had character. I don't think you couldn't improve upon the design of the TOG and have it still be the TOG. It would just be a tank that works. So yeah, no, you can't mess around with a classic. Just leave it be. Oh, I'm going to edit this out. I'm going to have a sneeze. Just a second. No, we're good. Okay, back. Next question from Sir Blake. Old Mingles with Jingles stories from the earliest episodes that you might want to tell again. Territorial Army Staff... Oh, Terry, the Army Staff Sergeant, scaring the female logistics officer. Yeah. Screwed up flags for colours and sunset. Yeah, I remember that one. Busted by the police for airsoft guns. Swaziland school riot. Go get your ninja star. Actually, you know what? I'll do that now. So... this might take up the rest of the episode, but you can only blame Sir Blake for this. So, the first story, Terry, the Army Staff Sergeant, who scared the shit out of our female logistics officer. So, when I was working at Fort Blockhouse towards the end of my career, Fort Blockhouse was a joint service establishment. So, there's Army, Navy, and Air Force there. The officer in charge of the admin office was a Royal Air Force flight lieutenant. And this guy was awesome. Joel Jolliffe was his Flight Lieutenant Jolliffe. Everybody just called him Joel. They're very, informal in the Air Force. Joel was in charge, and as you would come into the office, you'd have to walk past all the various different service desks, and then there was the Staff Sergeant's desk that you had to walk past in order to get into the Flight Lieutenant's office. Now, the thing about that particular posting for an Army Staff Sergeant, you were technically the office manager, and if you were in the Navy, the office manager would always be a chief writer. But what happened with that particular billet for the Army was that when a staff sergeant or higher was approaching retirement, they got to pick their last posting. And you didn't, for this billet, you didn't have to be an admin clerk. So Terry was infantry. He was an infantry staff sergeant. And I mean, there's Army and then there's Army, because the infantry are different, right? They're not like the catering corps or the logistics corps. They're the infantry, and they can be kind of scary. And the thing about Terry was, he the reason why he took this posting was because he'd taken a bullet in the hand in Northern Ireland as a result of the stuff that he was employed while he was prior to working at Fort Blockhouse. So, he did a lot of sneaky beaky stuff in Northern Ireland and took a bullet in the hand in the course of his duty, which rendered him unfit for active service, and so he took this job as chief clerk at Fort Blockhouse admin office. So he knew nothing whatsoever about admin. And the day he joined us, he would say, he sat us all down and he said, right, so obviously I'm not, admin, I'm infantry, I don't know a thing about what you do. All I'll say to you is, as long as nobody comes to me complaining about you, I'm happy. And if you have any trouble with anything, just come to me and I will rip somebody a new arsehole for you. So he was the best. He was the best boss you could have ever had. But he was kind of scary. Although I got along really, really well with him. He would just sit there on his computer, browsing eBay and buying bits of Land Rovers. That was what he did all day. Now, while we were there, we had this. She was really, really nice. I can't remember her name. Navy Lieutenant Commander was the logistics officer. So she was in charge of not just the admin office, but all of the stores and the catering and everything. And as part of her job, once a week she'd come around and get a briefing from the heads of the various different sub-departments. So in this case, Flight Lieutenant Jolliffe. And he was like Terry. He just didn't want to be bothered. Unless there's a problem, I don't want you to bother me. And he really, really liked having Terry sitting in front of his office door. So anybody who wanted to get to him had to get past Terry first. And Terry would often just look up and growl at people, and that would be enough to scare them off. So Joel loved Terry. Terry was his guard dog. But the thing about the logistics officer, she was kind of scared of Terry because Terry was a scary guy. And she really didn't like having to walk past his desk in order to get to Joel's office. And of course, Joel was entirely happy with this, but she still had to come and do this weekly brief. So on one of these weekly briefs, she would come in, she was like, "Morning, Staff Sergeant." He would like, because he didn't give a shit. And she would creep past his desk to get in and spend half an hour talking to Joel. And during one of these briefings, she'd say, "So, Joel, about Terry." "Yes, Mum." "He's not very friendly, is he?" "Well, no, you see, the thing you have to understand about Terry, Mum, the thing about Terry is he's not a clerk. Terry's a trained killer." He really laid it on thick. After that, she conducted the weekly briefings by email rather than come into the office and have to walk past Terry's desk to get to the flight lieutenant. The next story about screwing up flags for colours and sunset. I did this more than once. This was when I was a radio operator. So one of the responsibilities of the duty radio operator was at the back end of the ship, you've got the ensign staff where the white ensign gets flown. Talking about flags here. And at the pointy end of the ship, you've got the jack staff where the Union Jack flag gets flown. So when the ship is alongside or at anchor, you've got the ensign at the back and the jack at the front. When the ship's at sea, you've just got the ensign flying from the mainmast, the battle ensign, really, really big flag. But, and you don't do the ceremonies of colours when you pull the flag up in the morning, or sunset when you pull the flag down at night. But when you're alongside, you do. So one of the responsibilities of the duty radio operator is you've got these big canvas bags, and you put the jack into one, and you put the ensign into the other one. You already know where this is going, don't you? And then you tie the jack bag onto the jack staff at the pointy end up on the forecastle, and then you tie the ensign bag with the ensign in it onto the ensign staff at the arse end of the ship at the back of the flight deck. And then the oncoming duty watch actually does the ceremony of colours at 8 o'clock in the morning when the flags go up. Well, I put the wrong flag at the wrong end, and at the time we were anchored in Plymouth at the ammunitioning buoys, and they pipe over the main broadcast, "Attention on the upper deck, face aft and salute, colours," at the moment when the flag goes up. And there was like a count of 2 after that pipe, and then radio operator Charlton, flight deck at the rush, and I knew what I'd done. So I legged it down to the flight deck, and on the flight deck where there should be a white ensign, there's a jack halfway out of the bag with a hopping mad officer of the day yelling, "Get the flag up, get the flag up." So I ran to the staff. I ripped the bag off with half a Union Jack trailing out of it, ran the entire length of the waist of the ship right up to the forecastle, where the communications yeoman, who's in charge of all ceremonial shit, is leaning out of the bridge wings, screaming at the unfortunate soul, radio operator Portwood, Pasty Portwood, I remember him clearly, he was yelling at him, "Get the jack up!" He didn't know what was going on, didn't know what was wrong. He's just yelling at him, "Get the jack up!" And Pasty's just sitting there, staring into the bag, shaking his head because he's the wrong flag. And as I'm swapping the flags around, there's another main broadcast pipe. Attention on the upper deck. Turn to port and salute. Flag officer Plymouth. A local flag officer was sailing past in his launch right at the moment of colours as we were I was screwing the flags up. And was curious to know why we weren't performing the ceremony of colours in the morning. I didn't get officially done for that, but I did for the next 3 months have to sort out the jack and ensign bags every morning at 7 o'clock and ensure that they were in the right place for the next 3 months, and I was not the chief yeoman's favourite person. Next story, busted by the police for airsoft guns. Oh yeah. Again, another sort of Navy story. Man, I'm getting some mileage out of this question. So for those of you who haven't heard this one, actually I was talking about this to somebody just the other day. So I used to play a lot of airsoft. And as I'm sure you're aware, airsoft guns look just like the real thing. So I was deployed, I can't remember, in the Mediterranean somewhere. I think it was on HMS Newcastle actually. And the place where I was living, it was the leading writer, Davy Crockett. His house, because he didn't like living alone, so he had a bunch of lodgers, mostly, well, all of us from the same mess deck on board the ship. So the mess deck was called the 2Q Port Mess, and Davy's house was known as the 2Q Port Mess Annex because of all the various different messmates who paid rent to him and lived with him. So I was one of them. Anyway, we're all deployed, but I had to go back to the UK in the middle of the deployment for some course. I can't remember what it was, some kind of qualifying course. And while I was there, obviously you're not, attending the course on the weekends. I went out and played airsoft on the weekend. So came back, and I left all of the airsoft guns on the couch in the living room while I went and cleaned up, so I could come back and clean up the guns afterwards. Now, what I didn't know was that Davy's next door neighbour, he'd asked them while he was away, because he was deployed for 6 months, same as me, he'd asked them to come in and just take care of the garden. And obviously from the garden you could see clean through the living room windows that all of these very realistic looking guns lying all over the couch. And as far as the neighbour was concerned, the house was occupied. They didn't know I was back for a week doing a qualifying course. So their initial thought was, oh my god, a terrorist cell has taken up this house as a safe house to do terrorist stuff while the house is empty for 6 months. So of course they phoned the police. Now I don't know for sure that this is what happened, because the police didn't name their sources, but it seems fairly obvious that this is actually what occurred. So that night, at the stroke of midnight, I'm upstairs, basically naked except for my dressing gown, playing Star Wars Galaxies. And there's a knock at the front door. And I thought, it's midnight, what the hell could that be? So I went downstairs, I opened the door, and I immediately had 3 MP5s shoved into my face by armed tactical police officers. Good evening, sir. Is there anybody else in the house with you? They were very, very polite, of course, because, they were English police. And straight away I thought, I know what this is about. I said, no, I'm the only one here. Are you absolutely sure? Yes, I'm the only one who's here. Okay, can you put your hands behind your back, turn around, please? And I got cuffed. And then another police officer with a dog ran into the house and immediately cleared the place with the dog. Other cops by the back door, making sure I didn't try to take a runner. And yeah, it was about the airsoft guns. So I had to check every single one, and I had a lot. I think I had something like 20 airsoft guns at the time, because what else am I going to spend my money on? And they were very impressed with my MP5s, because my MP5s were better than theirs.
Wait, let me see.
They had the tactical Navy foregrip with the flashlight and the pressure switch. They had the actual, because that's the thing about airsoft guns, the real stuff will fit onto an airsoft gun because they're 1:1 scale replicas. So I had like a proper aim point sight and a proper Navy foregrip with a surefire flashlight in it, way better than the shit that the British police have to put up with on their budget. So yeah, I mean they were very professional, they were very polite and very apologetic when it was obvious that I wasn't actually planning terrorist operations within the county of Hampshire from Davy's house while he was away for 6 months. And as a result of that, a couple of them actually turned up to the Combat South Airsoft site and started playing because they were so impressed with the various different kit. I think we're going to have to call it there because we're coming up to 46 minutes. But I've really enjoyed retelling these old stories, and hopefully some of you have heard them for the first time. And if you haven't heard them for the first time, hopefully you're getting a healthy dose of nostalgia from hearing them again. So I didn't quite get through all of them. There's the Swaziland school riot as well. Oh, sod it. This is actually apparently from Mingles with Jingles episode 6, so I'll tell you this one. 1982, we emigrated to South Africa. We lived in South Africa for 1 year, and then my stepfather got a new job working for the Lesotho Pulp Company in Swaziland, so we then had to move to Swaziland. Now, Swaziland's got some great primary schools, but their high schools are terrible. So everybody sent their kids to boarding school in South Africa. A couple of years after I arrived at this boarding school, I think it was like the 20th anniversary of the Soweto Township riots. And I mean, politics. I was 14. I didn't know. But there were fresh riots in South Africa, marking the 20th anniversary of the riots in Soweto. I wasn't aware of, none of us in the school were aware of any of this, but obviously the teachers were. So we knew something was going on when the power went out. And the teachers mustered everybody in the study hall upstairs. It was kind of like the boarding school side of the school. You had the school and then the what they called the hostel, which is where all of the boarders lived. And it was kind of T-shaped. So there was the girls' side on one of the arms of the T, and then the boys' side on the other arm of the T, and then the leg of the T. Downstairs was the dining hall, and upstairs was the study hall, where everybody went to do their homework. So they mustered everybody in the study hall. All the lights were out. And looking out the windows, you could see fires burning. And the teachers would say, but bearing in mind that there was conscription in South Africa at the time, so every adult male had done military service. So the teachers were trying to tell us, yeah, don't worry, it's just the farmers burning off the old crops, ready for the planting season. But when a teacher is standing there with an R1 assault rifle telling you not to worry, right, you kind of know they're bullshitting. And the place where the school was actually situated was about half a mile away from what was known as Cooley Town, which is where all of the people who weren't white lived. And in order to, that half mile was it was practically jungle. So you wouldn't, if anybody was going to attack the school, you wouldn't know about it until they were already on the rugby field. Now, we didn't know that police snipers were sitting in the grandstand of the rugby field with night vision, waiting to shoot anybody who tried to approach the school from that direction. And all the teachers are wandering around with assault rifles, so we knew something was going on, but we definitely knew something was going on when the teachers turned around to all the boys and said, "All right, boys, so we know you've all made yourself weapons in metalworking class. Go and get them." And it was at that was the point where we knew that the shit was real. Although, thankfully, absolutely nothing happened. So anyway, yeah, that was it's not quite the Swaziland school riot, it was the South African school riot, but I did live in Swaziland at the time, so that's where that one comes from, all the way back in Mingles with Jingles, episode 6. So, Sir Blake, thank you for that blast from the past. Everybody else, I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you've all enjoyed this Q&A for November. And if you're watching this as Monday's episode of Mingles with Jingles, as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.